Here on video number 3 for column 400, we're looking at, is scientific knowledge infallible? Well, first, let's look at the definition of scientific knowledge. What is scientific knowledge? And in fact, this is a very pertinent thing to study right now because a lot of people are talking about what science is. Some people are saying, don't trust science. And I would just throw my opinion in there. If it comes to whether you should take a vaccine, get the vaccine. The science on that is very important and good. There are some things we're not sure about with the coronavirus, exactly how it works. People have posited different things and saying we think this is what's happening, but people are admitting right now they don't know. So scientific knowledge can be added to. So what is scientific knowledge? It's precepts, information defined by researchers. Now, that doesn't mean it's infallible, but it is often the best information available. Researchers are fallible, so sometimes somebody will make a mistake. A good researcher will make fewer mistakes if they're following all the rules. And if things are checked and re-researched and examined, there is less of a chance that there's going to be a problem. Okay, let's look at scientific knowledge. Now, some people, you might have been surprised that there are actually some different researchers that disagree about some things in regard to the pandemic, for instance. So let's look at scientific knowledge. It's precepts discussed in the research community which don't have universal support. Something can be accepted in the scientific community, and it doesn't have everybody as 100%. That's because in science, people are skeptical, and so there's constant testing. It doesn't necessarily mean you throw out the best knowledge. It just means that understand that there's going to be disagreement among scientists, and there is supposed to be disagreement among scientists. In fact, robust discussion is always part of scientific knowledge. Now, you don't want to get to fisticuffs like these guys are. I would say that maybe these are scientists, but they look more like actors that were taking some pictures for stock photos. But it's okay to have robust discussion, and right now people are trying different things. I think you do want to go with what some of the best minds are saying at the time. Particularly in regard to the pandemic, wash your hands, stay inside, and some of those guidelines. Now, what are some of the scientific theories of the past that are now disproven? Let's take a look at a few of those. And normally I would write these on the board, and people would come up with things I've never said, I never thought of. But here are a couple that have changed over the years. One, the Earth is flat. Unless you're a flat earther, and I still don't, there's a lot of flat earth memes and jokes about flat earthers. Still don't understand how you can live in today's world and come to that conclusion. But actually, many years ago, scientists thought the world was flat. And here's an interesting thing. The best scientists said, I think that the Earth is round. However, if the Earth isn't flat, on the other side, people walk on their heads. And they thought that they didn't understand gravity, obviously, so they thought if you were on the other side of the world, you would have to walk on your hands, and then you would constantly be pulled toward the Earth upside down. So that was like the best thinking at the time. Those were the people who were advanced who thought the world wasn't flat. But there have been many ideas like this. One of the best scientific writers of his time, a man named Isaac Asimov, and we don't hear him about him now, but early part of last century, he was very influential. And he said, no one will ever walk on the moon. And of course, we know that people have walked on the moon. And so that was something that was disproven. People will never make a flying machine. People used to say back in the 1800s that people weren't meant to fly. If they were meant to fly, they would have wings. And of course, the Wright brothers disproved that. I don't know if you've ever been to the Smithsonian Institution and seen the Wright brothers' planes and some of several of the prototypes that they made. Very exciting to look at that and realize those were the first things that ever flew. And so that was proved wrong as well. Another thing that was proved wrong was that steam can't power an engine. And this is my one claim to fame. I am the great, 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 um, well, it was my great, 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 great uncle who invented the steam engine. That was Fulton. Unfortunately, I believe the genius ran out after the third generation, but very, very far back. I have to go pretty far back to stake a claim to a celebrity, but that is my claim. The also related to that, they used to say air can't be used in braking systems. You've probably heard of air brakes. If you've been at a railroad crossing, you may have heard when the train stops and you hear the hissing of the air. They still use that to stop trains. Now, before that, it was really hard to stop a train. They would have athletic people who would turn these manual wheels that would stop each different car. So they would pull on the wheel on one, then they would jump to the other car. They would put the brake on that car and then run on the top of the car to the next car. And of course, in winter, people were always dying. The people who were doing the brakes, because they would slip, and it was not a good situation. So the air braking systems, but at the time they thought, you're saying you're going to use the wind to stop a locomotive, and it was just laughed at. Today we still use it. Oh, some buses use that too. You can hear the kind of the hiss when it stops. That's the air brake system. Another, you can't cure a disease with a disease. We're lucky that was disproven, because we're looking for a vaccine for the COVID-19 virus. But smallpox actually was they found out they could cure smallpox with a vaccine. Okay, moving along to conflicts of interest. Now, sometimes I ask what a conflict of interest is. And basically that just means that maybe you're supposed to be overseeing something and you have another conflict. You have something that might steer your judgment wrong. Now, circumstances can compromise professional judgments. If a person is doing some research into, let's say, oil, and they happen to be invested in oil fields, that would be a conflict of interest. They might feel pressured or feel inclined to say something that wasn't true because it might make them rich. So that's an example of a conflict of interest. Here's another example. A reviewer might receive a manuscript that attacks the reviewer's research. I had a friend who did a paper and it attacked somebody else's research. She sent it in and found out the editor of that well-known magazine or journal, communication journal, had authored that, the editor had authored a project she criticized. The editor said, this is so bad, I'm not even going to send it out to reviewers. In like a day after it was set in, that's unprecedented. And that researcher went and published it elsewhere. But that would be a conflict of, very much a conflict of interest. So in that situation, what should a reviewer do? Well, if a reviewer thinks that they can't be impartial, they should send it to somebody else. I remember one time when I was editing a issue of a journal, I sent something out, and the person who received the article for Blind Review said, I actually know who wrote this because I recognize their style, so I can't actually review this. So that's being honest and realizing that they know who it was and that might be a conflict. So we are going to stop there for the minute. For a moment, we will continue on our next video.